everyone. Since due to the time constraint, what I'll do is instead of just going through the demo, I'll just go through the screenshots. And if any of you not familiar with any particular of the screenshots and where it is and how it is, like just raise a hand. I can quickly switch over and show it the demo of it. So how many of you has, okay, before we start, my name is Linn. I'm Business Application MVP. I'm starting a new job at the Brisbane City Council. Being there in next January. Then this is the link to the slide deck. So you can just scan the QR code, take the screenshot, and then download the slides. So that will also be in the last slide. So you can also take the screenshot on the camera while we're doing Q&A. Okay, how many of you are just building like cloud flows from day to day, like quite comfortable? And how many of you start using the new Cloud Flow Designer, which comes with a Copilot? Okay, not a lot, but that's all right. We'll just, today's screenshots, we'll just keep the old ones, the classic ones, because some of the things, if we're not familiar, if I show the new ones, it might confuse the people more. Okay, today agenda, we'll start off with how to optimize the Dataverse actions, more on trigger and also all these list roles, and how do we make sure we don't do unnecessary updates, and some other useful tools that I personally use from day to day to build for ordering cloud flows, and ends up with the hot topic, the licensing, the popular forms, request limits, and recently how do we associate the cloud flows to the apps so that the flows not getting disabled. This is just a repeat of some of the slides I've repeated from my previous year session. Whenever we have this trigger, I just would like to emphasize we just need to make sure all these put the select columns and the filter rules so that the flows are not being triggered unnecessarily. There are multiple ways to do it. One way to do it is to use the trigger condition, which is a generic for all the triggers, but for the Dataverse trigger, I recommend to use the filter rules. So in that way, this will only be triggered when the status is verified or status is equal to a specific integer value. And one thing to make sure when you put the select columns, make sure there's no space in between. Sometimes we're English speaker, we usually type comma and space, which causes a lot of struggle through. You might sometimes find it the flow is not triggering and scratching your head just ended up with the space in between. And one of the things is just like plugins, classic workflows, all these filter rows, you can do it, trigger it only within this table. So you cannot filter it from the parent table. So you cannot filter it. Let's say run this flow when the primary contact specific value from the primary contact is specific value. You cannot do that. So in that case, you need to have another condition step between and check it and cancel the flow. So that's imitation with the rows. And so you don't know how to, the easiest way to get those logical names to put in the filter rows, select columns is to use one of tools. My favorite tools is a level up to get the logical names, and then you can see all the logical names on the form. So in that way, you don't really have to go back into the Solution Explorer to see the logical names of the columns. And not only that, this tool can also show you the option set values. So you can see click option set values, and you can quickly check out all the option sets or choice values of the in this particular form. And another one is the open this record in the web API. So in that way, you can open up the JSON value of this records, which contains all the column values, even those which are not in the on this form. So that's one of the tools that's recommend for authoring tools, Cloud Flows. And a lot of times we usually miss out to add the select columns when we use the list rows. What it happens is it will just show all the columns available in that table. So you have to scroll through a lot when you select the next step. That's from the authoring experience. Also for a performance perspective, when you query like that way, imagine you have 200 or 100 columns in the teams, and then you're querying like 100 teams, and then it will return all the columns in your result set. So by specifying only the columns that you need, then it will only come up all the columns in this list. So let's say we query the team name administrator. So it's easier for you to navigate and choose in the next step, as well as it's better for the flow performance. And one thing that is still not really working out well is the lookup. So we need for lookup, we have to specify the underscore lookup logical name underscore value that is required to retrieve this particular lookup column. But the flow designer doesn't understand that bit. It works at some point, but it's not working at the moment. So you need to specify the normal one as well, so that this particular option will show up in the list. But this one is not necessarily required for the flow to work. So once you're done, you can probably remove it. Another option thing is for you to get the, let's say the lookup, the display name of the lookup value. So you want to get the primary contact full name in your flow in the path. So normally you might have to query, get a row and pass the GUID and to get another value. But instead of that, what you can do is you need to write an expression, put that at OData community display v1 format value and write the expression in a way that it will just return all the formatted value. So let's say this is the primary contact and the GUID, and this comes with the full name of the lookup. And not only that, it also works for the choice columns, like status reason, even for the like currency values. It comes with the dollar sign and also comma, like normally formatted value. You can, I was supposed to show it in the demo, but you can go to the more details in this link after you downloaded this slideshow. And another thing is to query the data in the one list rows instead of doing multiple times. So my recommendation is to, let's say in this scenario, I want accounts and also the email address of the primary contact ID. So instead of going through and use another query to get the email address, you can expand and get it in the expand query. So for that one, I totally recommend Batch XML Builder. I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar with this tool. All you have to do is just like Advanced Fine, you just build your query and you click on the convert and automate parameters. That will come up with all the parameters for your list actions. So as easy as this. So just simple like the things like the lookup. Like we didn't know, like for the new people who didn't know, we had to put the underscore and underscore value. So this tool will show you how you can do it. And let's say for the simple filter query parameter like equal, not equal, null, not null, it's easier for us to write it out. But there are some native dynamics conditions, especially for the dates like last 6 months and yesterday, today, like next 5 years. So for these kind of things, we don't know how to write in the filter. So you can learn it by putting in the filter, and then the tool will show you how to use this kind of specific conditions. And this is the expand, and it is a little bit important because especially in the polymorphic lookups, the expand will not be just a simple lookup logical name. It can be something the single navigation link ID. So sometimes it's a bit hard to work it out without using the tool. So it is a tool that I always use when I use the query. So by using that tool, you can just fill out all this information over here, and this action will work just like that. And with the tool, you can even have a nested expand. So you can have here like primary contact, and then in the primary contact get created by, and then it's a parent system user ID business unit. So you can go nested like you can go up to like 11 nested level. So, but if you go more than one level up, well, you will have to write your expression by yourself, like something like this. So all these navigation properties, you put a slash and write a navigation. For one level up, just like the email address of the primary contact, that will be shown up on the dynamic value list, because the flow designer can understand it. But if you have a nested one, it cannot show it more than one level. So yeah, you can have more details in my blog post. So just like this, for nested, you just write it in your batch XML builder. And one thing that I would like to remind, just like how we have to select the select column, for each nested table, you will have to specify the attributes, even if you don't need it. If you don't need anything, just put the primary column, primary GUID column. Because if you don't specify it, it will also query the whole columns or the related table. So that's important. That is a bit of a reminder to, instead of you query multiple times, you query all the data, the big data set, and then you can manipulate within the flow. That is way cheaper than you doing querying the data set multiple times. So in this scenario, what it did was we have the opportunity line. So every time the code status is changed, we look through all the code line and get the discount values from the opportunity line and copy it and override it. So that is one of the flows that I optimized it. And the previous design, the previous developer, what they did, we just for each loop, they go and query each line and then update it. So imagine there are 20 lines, you have another 20 list rows to get this related opportunity line. Instead of that, once it's optimized, you get all the lines. You can use the filter action, and you can just get the related records within the flow itself after caching the data. So similarly, if you have anything like country, you just master data set, you just load it, all the data that you require and process it within the flow. It's a lot easier and faster. So lately, I have been in the community forum. One of the most frequent questions for new people is how to set the lookup. And yeah, it's just like entity set name and bracket UID and ends with the brackets. So what is the entity set name? It's the plural name of the entity logical name. But it's not necessarily like correct all the time, especially in the exceptional nouns, or even like foreign language name, table names. So one of the ways to get entity set name, you go to the Solution Explorer, click on the table, in the table properties and the tools, you can copy the set name. So it will be copied into the clipboards. Or you can go to the level up tool, and in the main entity metadata, you can have the list of all the tables within the environment, and you can just search and filter it. And you can get the entity set name of it. Actually, that was supposed to be a demo, but what I was trying to do is I just want to update the lookup dynamically. So let's say we have the parent account and all these child accounts. And if the parent account has a lookup value in the primary contact, update the value of the child records. Otherwise, leave it the value as it is. If the value is empty in the parent account, do not override with the empty value, just leave it as it is. So in order to do that scenario, we have to write an expression. So normally what you have to do is you have to have a condition branch. One where you update the where there's a value in the primary contact of the parent accounts, you update the primary contact as well as other fields. And if there is no value in another branch, you update only that other fields, but leave this, do not do anything with this primary contact. So by having these two updates in the different conditional branch, if you have any logic change, you need to change in multiple places. So, but no, that's not really optimized. So what you can do is you can have one single update step, just like this. And instead of putting in the value directly, you can set it with the expression. So if we break down this expression to it, if the parent's primary contact value is empty, what we do is we will check the current value. If the current value is also empty, just set it as null. If the current one has a value, we just set the same value. And if the parent's primary contact has a value, we will use the value from the parent's primary contact. So that's a little bit of like checking null and setting the concatenation with the values. But yeah. So Microsoft, they just added in the flow run history, we can now add the columns. We added the columns like name or other GUID of the particular row, so that it's easier for you to identify the specific flow run or specific row. So by changing that, then you can see all these values coming from the trigger output. So just beware that like this value is not the current value. This value is the one that's in the trigger output, which is coming at that point of time. So another tool that I recommend is the flow execution history. What it can do, some of the native flow history is that you can, let's say, select multiple flows. You can see the timestamp and you can correlate the triggers. And you can also filter by the date and different timestamp. So if you have one flow which happened like 20 days ago, it's easier to filter by date in the flow history. You scroll and you can download only 100 records. And you can also set the duration to find the long-running flows. And also, similarly, you can add the columns that you, just like the flow history from the native designer, you can add the columns of the trigger outputs. And also, you can even filter, like, okay, if let's show the accounts which were the primary contact GUID, specific GUID. So you can do that. Okay, so this tool is just to build the visual from the field flow. And it can also show the flow run history. And last but not least, it's a pilot with the theme of these days. So the pilot in the Cloudflow, that's the biggest tool. You just try it out. If you're more interested in join 3 p.m. sessions from currently, yeah, it's available in the Australia, enabled by default. So if you just like it, try it out. If you don't like it, switch back to the classic designer. If you're more interested in join 3 p.m. sessions for FA, it will cover all the Copilot in general across the whole platform. Okay, Bob the form request limits. So the current state is the licensed user request limits per 24 hour is the paid user. So paid user excluding per app license and Dynamics 365 team member, which are really like the very basic licenses. So is 40,000. And that's why it's important for us to assign flows to the automatic flows, like all these scheduled flows, to the non-licensed user, which is the service principal accounts. If you have the Dynamics 365 Enterprise or Professional, you can have up to 500,000 requests as space. And for each user license, you can up to 5,000. But if you only have RS or Power Automate license, just you have the 25,000 base requests, and there's no additional requests for the additional license. So by request, for the form request, that means every each step, like compose step, condition step, initialize variable. Each step counts as one request. And if you have a loop, if you are looping 5 records and then you have 5 compose, there will be 5 requests. So you have to be. So that's where if you have really mission critical flow, like really heavy duty flow that running, you will need to consider signing a automated power plant flow, where it can allow up to 250 requests per 24 hour. And that does not use the non-licensed user request limit, because imagine like you have a big organization across like different departments. This non-license is shared in the tenant level. So you can't really restrict who is using that request. So one thing to consider. Always the Cloudflow owner is the one who is consumed for these request limits for automated and scheduled flows. So you can't really edit it from the flow designer. Microsoft recommendation recommends to update the web API, but the easiest way is to go to the advanced, like the classic advanced spine, and then you can reassign all the flows. It's easier that way. Okay, so a lot of organizations might be receiving emails like some of those are not compliant. It's going to be disabled and all these things. So you need to, if the flow is owner is the service principal, obviously the owner doesn't have the license, and then it's in context of the Power Apps or Dynamics 365. You need to assign it associated to the app. You need to, how you know what flows are at risk. You can run the PowerShell script that get any flow at risk of suspension. You can have the full script in the Microsoft Docs site in the below. And other than that, so for all these licensed user, non-licensed user, per flow, you can get like which flows are consuming what number of requests. You can get it in the usage information. And in that way, it's for non-licensed user report, you can see like which department, which floor is consuming a lot of non-licensed tenant-wide consumption. And then you have to, if required, you have buy additional capacity add-on, which allows 50,000 requests per 24 hours. So it can be added to highly usage licensed user or even for a non-licensed user. So other than that, about platform request limits, the other limit is service protection API limits. So there are a lot of limits. We have 3 limits we're talking today. So this is the second one. That is how you're hitting the Dataverse server, web server. So it's 600,000 requests within 5 minutes sliding window. That's it can sometimes hit easily when you do data migration and there's a Cloudflow running, and there are a lot of steps happening behind the scene. So one of the recommendations was to have a dedicated service principal account for very heavy loading flows, and make sure you separate your integration points, different application user for different integration, so that you will not hit this service protection limits. If you use one account for everything, definitely you will hit it one day. This is the last action request limit for Cloudflows. So this is Power Platform request for 5 minutes is 100,000. So Power Platform request for 24 hours is 10,000 for low. Low is for these users. Medium which is 100,000. That's for most of the normal paid license, and high is for the rate for flow plan. So again, this is the same, like use the plan of the flow owner. So to reduce the number of requests, what I recommend is, like, if you have a developer in your team, ask them to maybe write an expression. Like, let's say, for example, you have like 5 different steps. You get a time, convert, and add day, and change the date. You can do all these things in a single expression. So it's a citizen developer friendly platform, but sometimes you might have to get optimized a little bit to make your flow. So the same outputs coming from the side. Okay, and that's all. Any question?
Yeah.
I think there's a question from Stephen online. Oh, I think he's saying it verbally though. Yeah, Rami, can you hear Stephen? He was like talking.
Let's see the. While we're waiting for online questions, any offline questions?
So very interesting topic, Linn. When you think about the number of Power Automates you've got, and if you've got an organization that processes hundreds of thousands of applications a year, it's very easy to get to those limits. And all those optimizations become critical. Like even just turning 4 steps into 1 is going to be a lifesaver. So what happens if you reach those protection limits?
Well, you will get notification first, and then you'll get throttled. And then next thing you know, you contact Microsoft support.
Yeah. So basically, the experience that we've got here is that they just pause. So your Power Automates will pause until you end that rolling time, and then they'll trigger again. So it's something to keep in mind that you may end up in some incorrect state with your data, and you have to keep an eye on it and monitor it. But as you mentioned, Linn, like there's lots of ways to actually keep an eye on it, and then also to just make sure that you don't actually exceed those